that new press secretary, she's a gangster.
That video, dude.
She's a gangster. They're prepared. And you know why they're prepared? Because they're trying to play gotcha.
Yep.
So she played gotcha with them. She checkmated them.
She came in there with that Elon Musk flamethrower.
Play that video.
Watching this clip, I couldn't help but think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists. But they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
The hosts of The View have made a sport out of labeling Republicans as conspiracy theorists. But let's rewind the tape. Over the past few years, their own track record. A steady stream of inaccuracies, overreactions, and self-righteous finger-pointing. Their latest target? White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. Her crime? Daring to stand her ground, speak plainly, and refuse to cave to the emotional theatrics that have become a hallmark of the daytime talk table. Rather than engage in genuine discourse, they launched a barrage of personal attacks, so exaggerated, so theatrical, that even Joe Rogan couldn't resist jumping into the fray. On a recent episode of his wildly popular podcast, Rogan took direct aim at The View, torching their performance as woke performance art, and dubbing the panel a crew of phony pundits, completely adrift from reality. He didn't hold back, and neither should we. If you crave commentary that's unfiltered, unapologetic, and just a little bit combustible, go ahead. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
That new press secretary, she's
that video, dude.
She's a gangster. Have you seen that video?
You've never
Jamie?
seen someone more prepared for a question in your life, Jamie.
Have you seen that?
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
Small point on that. Not the big point, but small point. She was so prepared for
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, she's supposed to be prepared.
That's why I
Jamie.
said you've never seen someone
You know
more
why?
prepared.
for that.
They're
Joe Rogan didn't waste any time setting the tone, kicking off with high praise for White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. He applauded her for doing what so few in D.C. managed to pull off: standing tall, thinking fast, and holding her own against the barrage of gotcha questions from the legacy media. With poise and precision, Leavitt delivered clear, confident answers. No scripts, no stumbles, just straight talk. Rogan highlighted what a growing number of Americans have already picked up on: Karoline is a force. Sharp as a tack, unshakably composed, and crystal clear in her messaging. Frankly, we've never seen a press secretary this agile under pressure, and so thoroughly in command of her brief. Now compare that to Karine Jean-Pierre, whose tenure under President Biden felt more like a drawn-out improv session gone wrong. Her reliance on binders, vague talking points, and political theater often left reporters and viewers scratching their heads. Enter Karoline, and it's a whole new game, one that The View clearly doesn't like playing. To them, a conservative woman with backbone isn't impressive, it's threatening, and instead of respect, she gets mockery. Heaven forbid she thinks for herself.
Young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that.
So what was Karoline Leavitt's so-called crime? Dare to look the ladies of The View straight in the eye and tell them, without flinching, that she wasn't buying into a second of their sanctimonious, woke theatrics. That moment, it landed like a thunderclap. A clear, unapologetic challenge to the groupthink that's become daytime TV's bread and butter. They weren't prepared. Not for a young, sharp, fiercely articulate conservative woman who refused to play along with their script. But Karoline didn't blink. She stood her ground, calmly exposing the double standards and self-serving outrage that have come to define that panel. And here's the twist: not even all liberals are clapping for The View anymore. Bill Maher, hardly a Trump supporter, has openly called out Whoopi and her co-host for drifting into political parody. He's criticized their descent into identity-driven drama and performative fury.
Shocker that the people who see everything through the lens of race and sex see their election loss as a result of racism and sexism. Yes, if only we weren't so irredeemably unenlightened, we would have elected a black president by now. Oh, what?
When even Bill Maher, once a darling of the progressive left, starts calling out the absurdity, you know something's off the rails. And Karoline Leavitt didn't just point that out, she held up a mirror, crystal clear and impossible to ignore, and dared the View to take a long, honest look at themselves. Initially, she didn't dignify their snide remarks with a response. Frankly, she had more important things to focus on than a table of opinionated talk show hosts tossing lazy jabs between commercial breaks. But the attacks kept coming. They mocked her youth, sneered at her resume, and in a moment of peak pettiness, suggested she earned her position based on her looks, not her intellect. Karoline had stayed quiet long enough. When she finally responded, it wasn't with rage, it was with razor-sharp clarity. Every word was deliberate. Every point, dead on. Her clapback wasn't just personal, it was principled. She exposed the irony of women who preach empowerment but recoil when a woman outside their ideological bubble dares to succeed. For Karoline, silence was grace. But her words were fire. Karoline Leavitt's words didn't just land, they sliced clean through the self-righteous smugness of the View like a precision blade. Sharp, direct, and impossible to deflect, her takedown was a masterclass in composed firepower. They knew she was quick-witted, but clearly underestimated just how blistering her verbal arsenal could be. What she delivered wasn't a rant, it was a calculated strike. Brutal in its accuracy, eloquent in its delivery, and armed with the kind of unapologetic clarity that leaves a mark. The panel wasn't ready, and it showed. Their reactions. A mix of stunned silence, awkward laughter, and desperate attempts to regain control. As expected, Whoopi Goldberg wasn't about to retreat quietly. A veteran of daytime drama, she stormed back with a barrage of emotional swings and recycled talking points, hoping to salvage the moment with volume over substance. But the damage had already been done. Karoline didn't just challenge the narrative, she exposed its foundation. Behind the Fox toughness and snappy soundbites, the View couldn't mask its discomfort when a conservative woman speaks with facts, fire, and zero fear.
Not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
There are moments, too many frankly, when listening to Whoopi Goldberg speak feels like a masterclass in secondhand embarrassment. Sure, she was once a celebrated actress with a few standout films under her belt. But beyond the Hollywood accolades, what lasting impact has she truly made for Black women in America? Where are the grassroots initiatives, the mentorship programs, the policy advocacy or boots-on-the-ground work that moves the needle? If they exist, feel free to enlighten me in the comments, because I searched and I'm coming up empty. Yet Whoopi speaks with the gravity of someone who's waged wars for social justice. When, in reality, much of her media legacy is defined by tone-deaf commentary, confused rants, and some of the most jaw-droppingly awkward live TV moments we've seen in years. Rather than amplifying the voices of Black women or challenging the status quo, she often dilutes the conversation with oversimplified takes and performative outrage. If she's a voice for anyone, it's the one mainstream media parades to signal false progress. Enter Joe Rogan, never one to bite his tongue. He saw the spin, called it out, and lit the match. What followed? Unfiltered, undeniable fire. Take a look.
That people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen.
Whoa. Joe Rogan didn't just enter the chat, he kicked the door down with verbal artillery. It was less of a critique and more of a full-blown intellectual airstrike, and honestly, it was long overdue. Rogan took aim at the View and didn't miss. Every shot landed with surgical precision, exposing the show for what it's become. A chaotic circus of half-baked takes, disguised as daytime discourse. Let's be real, some of the commentary from that panel is so wildly detached from reality. you start wondering if they've been infected with a new strain of ideological madness. Case in point, Whoopi Goldberg's now infamous claim that the Holocaust wasn't about race. A statement so shockingly ignorant, it drew universal backlash from all sides of the aisle. And then she doubled down with another head-scratcher, claiming Black Americans have it worse than women in America, as if those experiences are somehow a competition or even on opposite ends of the spectrum. These aren't just slip-ups. They're reckless, divisive narratives being broadcast to millions. And finally, someone with reach and backbone, Joe Rogan, called it for what it is. Joy Behar tried to rush in and do damage control, playing defense for her co-host. But let's be honest, not even she could stand the inferno Rogan lit.
Went after Joe Rogan on The View, and he fired back spectacularly.
You're worried about losing your job, and you're worried about podcasts taking over, and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us, and he won, and this is and Joe Rogan believes in dragons. They're trying to play gotcha.
Yep.
So she played gotcha with them. She checkmated them.
She came in there with that fucking Elon Musk flamethrower.
Play that video.
Joe Rogan didn't just respond to Joy Behar. He incinerated her latest bizarre outburst with signature wit and surgical sarcasm. Behar, in one of her more unhinged moments, actually claimed Rogan believed in dragons. Yes, dragons. The moment was so laughably absurd, Rogan couldn't resist tearing it apart. And he did so with the kind of relentless mockery only he can deliver. But he didn't stop at the dragon nonsense. Rogan went full throttle, driving Behar's long-running history of unfiltered, off-the-rails hot takes right into the spotlight. He called out the hypocrisy, the performative outrage, and the glaring lack of intellectual weight that often defines her appearances on The View. Then, in a moment of contrast, Rogan pivoted and praised Karoline Leavitt. He applauded her sharp mind, her composure under fire, and her refusal to fold under media pressure. Unlike the talking heads who hide behind buzzwords and emotional theatrics, Leavitt, he said, brings real clarity, courage, and substance. In a political landscape clouded by noise, Rogan made it clear. Karoline Leavitt isn't just another voice, she's the rare one cutting straight through the static.
Whoopi Goldberg saying it's worse to be a black person in America today than a woman in Iran. I say we were talking about the trans issue before, and the New York Times really has come over on that to the sort of the sensible, liberal, not crazy woke position. I think this is a great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity, and a second good step would be we got to do something about the view.
Bill Maher nailed it, and not just with a passing remark. If we're serious about reclaiming the principles of classical liberalism and flushing out the ideological sludge that's corroded our culture and institutions, then there's no better place to begin than The View. That show has devolved into a high-decibel echo chamber, where nuance goes to die and outrage is served with morning coffee. What once masqueraded as spirited debate has now become a ritual of groupthink, identity politics, and performative virtue signaling. It's no longer a talk show, it's a televised meltdown, 5 days a week. Classical liberalism used to mean something: individual liberty, civil discourse, open inquiry, limited government. It was grounded in the belief that ideas should be tested, not protected. But that foundation has been hijacked by modern progressivism, repackaged into a dogma that silences dissent, rewrites biological reality, and uses tolerance as a weapon to demand ideological submission. If liberalism is to survive, it needs to excise its ideological rot, and The View is the perfect specimen for that operation. Enter Karoline Leavitt, bold, articulate, and unflinching. She doesn't just challenge the rules of the woke playbook, she rips them up and tosses them aside. Her refusal to bend to media theatrics isn't just admirable, it's desperately needed. Joe Rogan saw that, and he didn't mince words. His defense of Leavitt wasn't just a show of support. It was a torch held up to the hypocrisy of modern daytime commentary. He torched the shallow soundbites, the unearned moral grandstanding, and the cartoonish outrage peddled by Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg. From praising Karoline's sharp intellect to dismantling The View's absurd takes, Rogan echoed a growing public sentiment. Enough is enough. If we want honest dialogue and real progress, we have to stop rewarding the loudest voices in the room and start uplifting the smartest. Because in a world drowning in noise, clarity is rebellion, and Karoline Leavitt just delivered a masterclass.